At some point in the digital age of boss babes, new money, and ambitious rookies, we stopped consulting our village's wisest. Women have been the heartbeat of the world within their respective communities, workforces, and families since the dawn of time. They are the magic makers, the peacemakers, and the ass kickers. Let's celebrate them with the Matriarchy Party. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Matriarchy Party. I am so excited for today's interview. We're skipping the party of one. We're going straight to our party. We have an amazing guest. Today, I'm thrilled to be welcoming the Queen Regent Mediel herself, Ms. Cynthia Addai-Robinson, to the party. Cynthia is an actor who you've probably seen in either or all of the above. The Accountant, The People We Hate at the Wedding, Star Trek Into Darkness, Spartacus, the CW TV series Arrow. We met, as you can imagine, with her intro, was a little bit of a teaser there on season 1 of her project, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, on Prime Video, where she plays, you guessed it, the Queen Regent Mediel, where I have been supporting doing BTS social content capture throughout the seasons. And I am just constantly amazed. You know, when you meet those people that you're just like, you are such a green light. From the moment I met her, she's such a talented actor, of course. And from what I found on the internet, a singer as well, although I have not heard firsthand. But we both have the love of karaoke in common, which I love that. The internet, you know, tells you all about all the things you need to know. The show has a huge cast and with lots of complicated lore and moving parts. We were just talking before we started about the schedule and the secrecy and who knows what and when and where and what's allowed to be said, as you can imagine with a show like that. And there's a lot of travel, not only with filming, but press days and press junkets and social. There's so many components. And Cynthia's just been the greatest joy and pleasure to work with, especially for me as a social person, which sometimes is an actor's worst nightmare, because in any ounce of private time, I'm like with my iPhone, like, so can I just get a little, whatever the ask is, after the exhausting beast of days and days of no sleep and no matter the ask. Cynthia's always greeted me with a smile and kindness, and she's just amazing at her job and has been so wonderfully warm to me. And so selfishly, not selfishly, but I adore you, and I'm so honored to have you here, despite you being like the greatest actor and talent, just such a sweet and genuine person. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm blushing. I'm flattered. I'm, very honored and humbled. So thank you for that amazing intro bio. I'm like, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say to that.
No, it's lovely. I mean, and I feel like we always see each other either like half asleep in the airport, having just got off on a plane, and we're like, how you doing? You alive? Okay. And then 5 minutes later, seemingly on the carpet, you're looking glamorous, and I'm taking slow-mo videos of you in your gorgeous gowns, and we just,
it takes a village, and I would never just be stumbling out to some press thing without a whole army of talented folks that sort of assemble you like a robot machine to go out there. So we've had quite the adventure over the last I guess it's over like a period of a couple years now, really.
It has been. I know. I was trying to do the math, and I'm like, how many? 2 plus? I'm like, it's just, and still going.
The time has passed strangely. I mean, even for me with Lord of the Rings specifically, it's been 4 years of my life somehow. Like that's, I always think about it like that's high school. That's
a whole like huge milestone of your life, a core piece of your life. Well, and seemingly you're producing other work. How do you have time to film all the things when this one is such a beast?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the beauty of an ensemble show or film or project is, you get to sort of share the workload, as it were. And so you will often have, gaps where the focus maybe isn't as much on you, or you have a sort of a period of intensity where it's all your stuff for like a chunk of time. And, I think with my whole sort of Rings filming experience, I'm sort of having this dual experience of the story itself, being immersed in that world and that project and all things Tolkien and all that sort of comes with. And then there's just living my life because, to be a part of this production, I've had to move twice internationally, bring my husband for the ride. Settle into different places, sort of acclimate to new environments, find new people to sort of bring into my community. So when I'm not filming, oftentimes I'm trying to, just like anybody else, figure out, well, what does my sort of typical day look like? if the sole focus isn't the particular project I'm working
Yeah.
on. And that's, I try to see I wouldn't even necessarily say silver lining, but the blessing and the I wouldn't even call it a curse. It's definitely not a curse, but when you sort of are living between countries, you start to realize like, oh, well, there are things I've left behind temporarily,
Yeah.
uh, that I'm so used to having as part of my routine that I've got to recreate it or come up with something new or find the thing that inspires me, motivates me, is interesting in the moment. And we filmed the second season of Rings of Power in the UK, but there you are, with the UK as your base, and it
Yeah.
becomes the off point to go to countries. What I always find amazing about being on that side of the world is, you could just go to Spain for a long weekend, go to Greece, just sort of hop over to a place. And travel for me in particular is something that there's an immediacy to sort of showing up stranger in a strange land where you kind of have to navigate and find your way. And obviously we have the internet, we have, you can kind of do all the research and look at the reviews of things, but I kind of quite like to feel a bit stumbly in a place because I actually think it's very good for you to
Yeah.
be on your toes in that way.
You're on your
Um,
own hero's journey personally, not just.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's interesting because like oftentimes that would be the thing that when I felt really disconnected and far from regular home, I would take the opportunity. My husband and I did this trip. It was in the middle of filming. I had like a portion of my shoot that we filmed in the Canary Islands, but I then had like 2 weeks where I wasn't going to be needed back to work. And I thought, well, I could just go back to London and kind of hang tight, or I'm in the Canary Islands. I'm like, well, where can I go from here? And my husband can meet me and we can sort of maybe just travel for this little window of time. So we ended up doing all of sort of Andalusia, southern Spain, and it was around the Easter holiday. So there are a lot of kind of, traditions and things affiliated with Holy Week there. And it was really amazing because you suddenly are going from like a fictionalized world that is drawing from a lot of real places and drawing from history to a place that has a lot of history and architecture and art and culture that's just right there. You just show up, and we would go to these places that were so awe inspiring, and that they're, hundreds of years old, full of history, influenced by different, um, there'd be some, group that takes over and then changes the architecture, and then another group's in and dominates that group. And so it was actually really amazing. And then before you know it, I had to go back to work, and you kind of hope that there's some residual thing you've absorbed
Yeah. You're like, I
that
am
you,
forever changed now. I will take
yeah,
this with me.
I think so when you're traveling in the right way. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, it's interesting because obviously so much travel in the social media age is about, documenting it. Because if you didn't document it, it's like it
Did it
didn't
even
happen.
count? Yeah.
Yeah. Like you got to prove that you did all the things that you're supposed to do. Um, but I also think there's something to be said about you want to capture it for yourself, of course, for your own memories and of course to share with people. But I think when you can really be present in a place, and even just engage with people. I mean, I think that's when I always feel, when the world and the times we're living in can feel quite heavy often. In my travel experiences, I often feel like I have something that restores my faith in humanity because a lot of my interactions, when you're leading with curiosity and other people sort of exchange that with you, I always feel like I come away feeling much better,
Yeah.
especially if there's like a language barrier and you realize, oh, some of these interactions transcend language. It's sort of about, again, having like a constant curiosity, but a genuine one, not again to prove anything to anybody, but because you really want to know, because you're really interested and you really want to sort of, explore and be
And connect
fascinated.
with humans and
Yeah.
know their history and how they live, especially when you're in like very maybe unusual or exotic locations that there is the language barrier, I guess, there.
Yeah. And I think, again, showing respect for it, right? I mean, like, obviously, I think when you're coming from, like, I'll just be generic and say, like, the West,
Sure.
um, that, you sort of stomping into a place, being entitled, not attempting the language or attempting to understand anything. I mean, it sort of gives a bad rap for anyone else who is actually trying their best to really, again, be respectful and understand that you are a visitor in somebody else's sort of, home and
Yeah.
place. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's interesting with, just to circle all the way back to the original question, but like filling my time in between projects or even on a project that has a really long sort of work period. um, there's other work, there's going from project to project, but I think the buffer or the transition in between for me usually is going somewhere else, which also becomes a bit of like this reset for me, because it's like I'm pretending to be a character, or I should say I'm inhabiting a character, and I'm immersed in a story in another world. And then I kind of need something in between that and then going back to just regular old me, like
Yeah.
my regular life, the way I regularly am. And so often there'll be some sort of travel sort of to break that up, because I can kind of just reset back to myself before I then have to re-enter my life, to go back to all my friends, to go back to, a different routine. And I've just sort of, I guess, made that a bit of a habit without even realizing it. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's like vacation, but I think it goes deeper than that for me, because I think I need that kind of processing time after the fact, where it's like, okay, I just went through this experience, I just did this thing, I might have been in some emotional state with a particular
Mm-hmm.
story, and now I need some time to sort of just pause, and then I got to go back and I
Recalibrate a
guess,
little.
yeah, for sure. And I think in the way that in all of our lives we have to have all these different versions of ourselves for different
Mm-hmm.
people in our lives. Like I gotta like, yeah, there's that sort of, I don't know, reset, recalibration, but then I have to prepare to be the various versions of myself
Yeah.
back in my life, whatever that means on any given day.
Well, yeah, like we were saying earlier, what is normal? Like whatever normal life is, I feel like it's constantly that whatever the meme is, because I'm chronically online, like, oh, just it's gonna be busy for the next couple weeks and then things will slow down again. And it's like, that's not the reality. We're in life,
Yeah.
we're in it. It's going to be busy forever and ever changing, especially with schedules like ours. I'm not normally on projects for like as long of a stint as you are when you're like moving and basically building a whole life in a new place to film. But I can imagine like even when there's such little slivers of free time, whether that's you're like, okay, am I gonna get a workout in or eat a meal or sightsee? I have 45 minutes. Like, what can I do with this? Because I want to like absorb and not just be in a beautiful hotel room in a cool place, but I mean, like building your own like normalcy wherever you are. I feel like that's been kind of part of my travel practice is like it's the coffee place that I want to go to. It's like, I mean, you have your places, like if it's your nail salon or your Trader Joe's or like the go-to spots when you're at in regular life, not fantasy life is what I kind of call it. But I have my go-to places at home and then like kind of recreating that when I'm in a place for a normal time. Like where can I go and walk and get a coffee or where can I go and see art or like, it's kind of nice to have some familiar places or like they start to be familiar once you're like connecting with people or yes, you're reading on social media or Google like recommendations for restaurants, but it is like the human experience of like, let me just see where this path takes me, or let me just like lead with curiosity, like you say. That not only kind of helps you build normalcy within like the unknown or like a new area that's not home for you, and also just I feel like get something greater out of the experience of travel in general, whether it's work or play. And in such a world that we live in, that's what do you do for work? Or how is work is like the leading conversation topic. And which is like,
Well, it can define you
yeah,
if you let it. And I suppose even those things you're talking about, like even like finding a cafe to get a cup of coffee or some place to walk to. I'm not a big. I always love the idea of like meditating, and I know people who that's very much a part of their life,
hmm
and I champion that when you know that that works for you. If you are not one to naturally gravitate toward, kind of silently meditating wherever that may be, I think that you try to find these other moments that can be meditative, like that short walk. Because part of it, especially as we're all so interconnected, digitally connected, it's like there are very few moments now where like you would maybe have your phone away.
yeah, you're not consuming something.
Yeah. So I think like that's maybe the other thing that travel gives me. It's like you really do kind of have to be alert and present. And again, you're using the phone maybe because you need the directions or you're using the map. But I also think that the more we started to understand the ramifications of being, constantly online and constantly on our phones, the more that practice of saying, okay, I'm going to like choose to sort of give myself this time. This is my time for myself. And just to let your brain kind of wander a bit, like if you're taking a little walk somewhere and you're not talking on your phone or you're not scrolling on your phone, I feel like I, especially now, need that. I really need to just sort of have my thoughts to myself
Yeah.
because I think creative person as well, it's like in order for creativity to flourish, I think you really do have to sort of go into your mind. And so again, like, do I think I successfully am the person meditating on the pillow? Like, probably not. But like, if I'm like, hiking somewhere, if I'm in nature, or even if it's not nature, even if it's like like an urban city walk,
hmm
but there are all these sights and sounds and snippets of people's conversation, or even like the din of a language I don't know. As a creative person, that for me sort of like gets ideas flowing and gets my
Yeah.
brain going, leaves space for something. Whereas, I just think the phone, the internet, the social media, I'm as guilty as anyone of like going, sort of finding myself scrolling endlessly. But I think that's why I especially am aware of the fact that like taking a walk, sitting somewhere, even going to places where you see culturally, it's like, oh, they don't sit at the table with their cell phone.
Yeah.
Like that's a very American thing,
Yeah.
I feel like, or at least certainly in the cities. But you'll go somewhere, you'll go to, some country and you realize like, oh, no one's doing that. That's not a thing here. Or they're
No.
not being on the go, or they're not doing things that, especially I think for city living, um, you start to get in the habit of because everything is go, go, go. But yeah, I feel like I'm in especially that mode now where I'm trying to counter, you know,
The
my attention.
noise. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's like the attention economy, right? Like many,
hmm
many things are vying for your attention, and you don't want to feel like you're um, just being pulled by things. You want to feel like you're consciously deciding how you want to spend your time and where you
Yeah.
want energy.
That somebody shouldn't have your attention hostage. I mean, and to what you were saying before, like you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're not allowing that time to recharge or just be still with your thoughts, or like you said, even if you're walking around and it's noisy, I find it's like get your AirPods out, like, and just listen to the sounds of the world and like recalibrate, because there's no stillness in my life seemingly. So I'm being more intentional about that too lately, especially this month. Like, and the holidays are happening and everything is chaos and it's the end of the year and it's like we're all half like sleepy and like drained from the crazy year and the world being on fire, and then also like wanting to enjoy the love and joy and being with your people of the holidays. And it's just, you're like, okay, I think we all overthink meditation. I'm trying to do it, but I feel like, A, there's no wrong way to do it. So I think that we all have that idea that we need to be like perfect yogis on a pillow and like in a yoga retreat of meditation, stillness and music and lighting and everything. And it's like,
Yeah,
work with
which
what you have.
for you,
No, I
yeah.
mean,
I
that's
mean,
lovely if you have that in your house, but I don't have that space. So it's like carving out the piece where you can.
Exactly. Or at least, again, just the permission to sort of go into your mind. Like I'm definitely somebody that, some people are really recharged by being around the masses or being around a lot of people or being
Those
around groups.
extroverts.
Yeah, I'm definitely, I guess I'm like introvert extrovert, but I'm definitely somebody that, like, I do enjoy my time with people, but then when I'm done, I'm done.
Totally.
It's I kind of like need to go back into my little shell and just, again, like, I guess it's sort of processing, mentally processing things, and trying to be as thoughtful as one can be about what you're experiencing in any given moment, and
Hmm.
then being able to sort of prepare yourself for, whatever the next day brings. So that's I'm always a fan of, like, know thyself. Like, you got to know what works for you.
Right.
There's that sort of, blanket advice that it's like, well, this is what you should be doing. It's like, well, you know what works for you. But I
Right.
think always sort of checking in with yourself, being willing to try something new that might, as we evolve, maybe you need, like, the things that you do to evolve as well.
Totally.
So, even for me, like, it's interesting in the last few weeks, I guess it's been now, maybe it's been a couple months, as somebody who is on the social media, I took a big old break, which I do frequently, because I just know
Good.
for myself, um, I I yeah, like, I have to sometimes take a full step away. And I've talked about it with other people, because of course there's always the fear of, like, if you're missing something
Yeah.
or if someone's trying to get in touch with you. And I just have accepted that. I'm like, I'm not going to worry about that, because ultimately when I do go back on, and if I have missed something, it's easy enough to explain yourself and say, hey, yeah, I took a
Yeah.
couple months off. I just needed to, for myself.
Nobody can
Um,
fault you for that.
you would hope, but I think I think the older I get, the more I am sort of, um, almost like setting that boundary for myself, where if somebody had some issue with it, well, I know my reasoning,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm sort of making that choice. So there is something kind of liberating in going, yeah, that doesn't bother me maybe
Yeah.
the way it bothers you, and that's okay, and I'm okay with that, because I know, the intention is not, uh, certainly not malicious.
Malicious or yeah. Well, and you're like at that point, if you have a problem with it, of me like setting a boundary and like taking care of my mental health, I don't think I want to do business with you anyways, or like be working with you, or like if it's a friend or personal contact, you're like, you know how to find me. Like if you really need, if it's an emergency, you're not DMing me on Instagram. So I feel like
Yeah,
it
exactly.
can wait a little bit.
Yeah,
Well,
and I love it.
yeah, you have to. Even somebody like for a long time, social being like my hobby and outlet, and then turning into my career, it was like, I can't be with my third arm of an iPhone all the time. Like I have got to have some boundaries there. So it's something that I've definitely in the last couple of years just had different routines of, especially when posting for clients and like doing strategy for clients, it's like all the time consuming trends and like, is it like, are we working or are we doom scrolling? And is like, we need to have a cutoff because you're wasting time of your life you're never going to see again. And there's got to be boundaries. But, well, and especially with the introvert extrovert thing, like I always feel like after San Diego Comic-Con, so I always thought I was an extrovert. And then I realized that I'm like, oh, my battery is at a negative by the time like 3 or 4 days come with like a Comic Con. I'm like, oh,
A
I'm
lot.
overstimulated. We have to
Yeah.
turn off and have quiet time. So apparently I'm an introvert because that's how I recharge too. But well, I want to ask you, when we think of a matriarch, we think of a woman who's the head of their tribe, family, or organization. When in your own life have you felt like you've had to demonstrate those traits, whether by necessity or not?
In my own life. Well, it's interesting because, I am having this sort of moment in my career. I've sort of really like worked my way up, and as you get those opportunities where you get to step out a little bit more, step forward a little bit more, and recognize that whether you're conscious of it or not, your leadership potentially sets the tone for, it can be an entire production. Um, but I'm thinking a lot more about yeah, sort of how my energy, my sort of leading by example, or however I am, can sort of have that ripple effect to the people around you, even if they're not working for you. They could be
Yeah.
working alongside you. Um, and it's interesting to sort of get to this place career wise where over time, you wake up one day and you're like, I guess I have learned some things because I've been doing this for like a while. Like it just happens over a period. And mentorship is like the other thing that I really enjoy because I think it's trying to be that person that I had always wished I'd had for
Yeah.
myself. I had longed for a mentor when I started in the business, and I very much had a kind of trajectory of like, I went to drama school, I graduated, I was immediately waiting tables, I was doing the open calls, I was self submitting for things. And I very much just sort of built my career in a very sort of like brick by brick kind of manner. And so I didn't have any mentor to kind of show me the ropes, or if there was some sort of question or how do I navigate this or that, I don't necessarily feel like I had somebody who could speak to their own experience. And oftentimes in mentorship, you're ideally hoping it's someone who can truly, truly relate to your very specific set of circumstances. Um, but sometimes it's just, I think, trying to be encouraging, especially for things that feel, um, I wouldn't even say impossible, but that the odds are against you.
Sure.
And for an industry that is, it was hard when I started, and arguably sometimes it can feel like it's become even more difficult when you're starting out. Um, and I remember early days of my own experience where you'd have not anyone sort of telling me specifically, but it'd be that thing of like, if there's any other career that you would consider pursuing, well, do that because like most of you are not going to make it. Like those kind of things that are like, I don't know if this is supposed to be a
Thank
pep
you. It's
talk.
very
um,
positive.
yeah, which I mean, I guess I intellectually understand if people are trying to say, look, you're going to be in for like a world of heartache and
Mhm.
rejection, this, that, and the other. But I've never felt like it was my place to come at it in that manner. And if anything, it feels like you want to be the voice of encouragement and say, like, nobody can tell you, like, this is definitely going to happen or definitely not going to happen. But you want to feel like, hopefully, you're saying something and it stays with somebody, especially in those moments where you're maybe at like a fork in the road or a crossroads, because it is a sort of a marathon situation,
Mhm.
and you kind of need those little bits of advice or pearls of wisdom that maybe in the moment it's like, oh yeah, that sounds like that makes sense, and then something maybe kind of like lands on you like 5 years later. you
Yeah,
know you hear something and it's like you understand it, but maybe you're finally in a situation where it's like, I now I really
it's
understand what that
relevant.
meant. Yeah, like it's hitting a little differently
Yeah.
with time and some other experience. So I feel like mentorship, for as much as I feel like I'm able to be that, um, sometimes mentorship is literally like in the moment that you have someone. It can be one conversation. Like I had always wanted to have a mentor that was just always there, but
Yeah.
I've taken mentorship from people that maybe didn't even realize they were mentoring me, or that's not
Yeah.
how we defined it. But I was looking up to somebody and admiring how they were able to like navigate not just this business but this life. um, and I guess the benefit of being in the business of storytelling is people are really great at kind of, laying out a bit of their story with the idea that there is some takeaway there. There's some, whether it's like an inspirational lesson or a cautionary tale. But I think our impulse to tell stories is our impulse to pass on,
The knowledge and share.
yeah, so that people can kind of navigate through things. So yeah, I mean, I don't. It's funny to sort of have that thing, especially where with Rings of Power and even other parts that I played, it's a funny thing as an actor to start to have an understanding of how people perceive you,
Mhm.
and maybe you like even lean into it a little bit, because in my day-to-day life, it's not as if I'm like, well, I'm a queen,
Yeah,
like
I'm
I
wearing a
feel like,
crown. Can you
yeah,
not see?
yeah, like I feel like just like a regular person living their like, for me, regular life. Um, and so it's always amusing to me when people are like, my queen. And I'm like, oh, that's,
You're like, "Thank you.
that's
That's
very
so
flattering.
silly."
Yeah. But it's almost like, well, there is something that I'm not consciously trying to put out there, but I have the benefit of like I get these characters to both hide within, but again also maybe like lean into, and sort of, if people want that from me, or if they have that perception of me, then why not why not feel
Give
like
the
they're
people what they want.
the people what they want, right? But
It's so
I've
true.
started to understand that a little bit, and you start realizing in some of the castings that like you're being hired, and these characters all have like a certain quality or a certain through line, but to get to like portray a queen and then have people be like, my queen, it's like, all right, well, let me do something with that. That's you don't get that every day. You don't get that
Yeah,
every day, So I'm trying to really kind of think about that and feel like if people are wanting, especially people coming up, whether it's in this industry or just again trying to kind of find their way, to utilize the opportunity to just be hopeful, especially right now. Like this
yeah,
is a weird time, like, that's putting it ever so mildly, but it's
yeah.
like trying to kind of just, yeah, like make sure that you can kind of say things that are encouraging and not lean into sort of like the difficulty of things, you
Totally.
know?
Sometimes, I mean, people need art and the storytelling, and sometimes it's an escape. And so you're like, if you're coming to maybe it's like a meet and greet or something, and then you're like, this is what this person needs, and it's like me being a queen, I'm going to lean into it. Sure. I mean, it's interesting because,
I think it can be an escape, but I think it can also at the same time, sometimes it's subversive, right?
yeah,
Like you're somebody something and it feels like it's just like an escapism, fantastical, fun story, or, it's splashy, there's, scope and whatever it is. And then underneath all of that, there is an attempt to, if you're trying to have characters that people care about and you want these like empathetic responses to these characters' plights, sometimes we can kind of react or relate to characters more than we can within our own lives. Like we cannot
yeah,
articulate something to our relatives or to a friend or to a partner, and yet there we are like sobbing over the fate of this character who's going through something. So I feel like even within escape, the goal would be to try to get you to think and to feel
totally.
and
Teach you
be,
something.
yeah, and maybe you do connect the dots, and maybe you do realize, what, I totally understand this on a human level, within my own experience within my own life. And I think escape is okay, but I think what I enjoy when it's doable is to be a bit more subversive than that, and kind of like sneak in the medicine with
Yeah.
the sugar, as it were.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I feel like that's with Wicked right now, is people are going for this fantastical, like if they're not familiar with the books or the Broadway show or anything, like you're going for the spectacle of it. But there's such deeper meanings that have like hit
That's
so many communities.
100% me. That was 100% me. And this is crazy because I actually am like a lover of all things musicals. I'm a
Yeah.
musical,
Me too.
love it. Somehow, I had never seen Wicked and
Wow.
hadn't read the book.
What a treat.
And so so I just saw it on Sunday. And how sometimes when like this is like a very weird thing, I know, but like everybody's like, oh my god, and you're like
It's going to be
holding off.
overhyped.
Reason.
Sure.
Yeah. So even though I know it's like one of the most popular
Yeah.
Broadway
You're like,
shows,
yeah, but it can't be that
yeah,
good.
yeah, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Um, Went and saw the movie with my family and my husband, and I loved it. And as I was watching it, I realized that one of the things, of the many things that spoke to me about it, was, you know, for women and girls, like, how often are you getting in a sort of cinematic experience a story about female friendship and the
Yes.
complexity of that, and your journey with another woman and how your relationship evolves? I was really trying to think, and I'm like, I know that that exists, but when was the last time I went to the movie theater and saw that
Yeah.
in an interesting way? So I absolutely
Were you ugly
love.
crying?
I managed to withhold because I was
Oh,
among.
good for
So,
you. I think
but
5 seconds in it was like welling up. I was,
I
oh.
had the lump in the throat and no. I think sometimes, like, when I can really sort of restrain myself, part of it too is like you have this admiration because you know how the sausage gets made, so to
Sure.
speak. You're admiring like the
Different
technical.
components.
Yeah, so like then I can try to have this like bit of remove where I'm
Yes.
like, well, they picked that
She
angle
did
there.
her own stunts and she hit that note on the
Yeah,
broom. Like, what? Like, you're admiring different things that are keeping you more stoic.
exactly. But then, as again, a lover of musicals and the power of not just storytelling through song, but through somebody's voice,
Yeah.
Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are both amazing technical singers, but um, when someone can really sort of carry a feeling through their voice and hitting notes, it's one of the most powerful expressive tools I think an artist can have. Like that, and movement of the body as well, I think is something that, like, again, it's the kind of thing, again, transcends language, is sort of
100%.
felt. So yeah, I'm on that Wicked train. I'm excited to see the second movie
All
when it
aboard
comes. I loved
in a
it.
year. Oh, I'm
I, I,
so glad.
I thought when I was going to see it, I was like, oh, it's going to be fun. I was like, I don't know
It's
what I was
fun.
expecting, and it
Yeah.
was. It had much
So
deeper
much
meaning.
meaning. Totally. So that's like the beauty of art. It's like, it's not a bait and switch. It's just like, you can be getting many different things out of it. Like, it can be an escape for some, or you can go in thinking it's one thing and then it ends up like it's going to touch a lot of people, and the people who maybe have very different viewpoints on the world that are going to look at that and empathize in a different way that maybe it needed to be shown in a
Well,
way
it's
that
good to
was,
be good to be caught off guard, because it
yeah,
means to have your guard up, or to go in already, ready to reject something. I think, yeah, when you can kind of surprise somebody or sort of catch them in a way where, like, they're not already, the defenses aren't already up.
yeah,
I think that's when art can be at its most powerful. And you certainly hope, when you're an actor, or if you're doing any other thing within this industry, like, that would be my goal. I won't speak for other people, obviously, but my goal would be to really have a sense of purpose and performance, and trying to really kind of speak to things and to people. And sometimes it's like, are you going to get the material that allows you to do all those things?
right.
You're trying to infuse it wherever you're able, because it's important to me when the industry and I guess the job as an actor can feel very frivolous at times. It's like, well, I need to find the deeper meaning for myself as a person on this earth, as somebody who is other things beyond being an
Yeah,
actor, like, to have more meaning for me and feel like I tried my best to do that wherever I feel like I was able. So yeah, that feels like something that, like, I've been very fortunate to have projects that are speaking to,
yeah,
deeper themes and have deeper meaning, and hopefully something I can sort of continue um, into the new year, into the years beyond. I think it's going to be, ever more important as we move forward.
100%. That's amazing. Well, we're going to rapid fire your matriarch because we need to get in. Who are we talking about today?
So we are talking about my mother Victoria Addai. And yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate to have, you know, a person who is like the first example for me of what it is to be a matriarch, what it is to be a woman, defining that for me in a way that feels like, you know, to watch my mom sort of take risks, push boundaries, and not do it because she felt like she was making some statement, but doing it out of necessity. Um, and a lot of the qualities that I hope that I have, that I feel like are very much directly related to just how she raised me and how she sort of carried herself. Um, I'm very close to my mother, and I'm very much my mother's daughter, which is all I would say. It's a good thing most of the time, and then I can humorously say sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I'm turning into
Turning
my
into my
mother.
mother. Of
Which
course.
I say is a positive, which
Of
I say is
course. But also funny sometimes, depending on what the thing is.
exactly.
Were you always close
Um,
growing up?
yeah, I mean, I feel like, my mom came to the US, and I was 4 years old and when we sort of moved abroad from the UK, and it was just the two of us. And so my mom had to navigate, being a single mother, raising a daughter, but also becoming an entrepreneur and sort of coming, to the US with dreams of having her own business. And it's interesting because, to be a single working mother, I feel like sometimes there can be that story of the single working mother, and maybe the child is not sort of getting all the attention, or is having to, I don't know, that balance is difficult. And of course, the older you get, and the more, whether you have your own children or not, the more you understand, like, how did she do it? Like, how
Yeah.
did she do?
The older you get, you're constantly like, what? How did any of this happen?
Yeah, like, it's impressive. And my memory of being a child was feeling like my mother was ever present, even though she somehow kept the hours that she kept working. But I always have a memory of my mother, coming to the school play or the PTA meeting, and
So
always finding,
present.
yeah, being present. And I think, if it's a situation of lead by example, I think there was something interesting about, my mother owned her own retail store, um, in downtown Silver Spring, Maryland, which is near Washington, D.C. And so at a certain age, I remember being a kid and I would like come, after school, I would go to the shop. And so I would maybe be like doing my homework behind the counter, or I'd be like putting things in the display, or I'd kind of have to like help out. And so I was sort of part of my mother's business from, I would say, maybe like elementary school to when I graduated and left for college. Like, maybe I was like working there over the summer, or I,
No
come on
wonder
the
you have
weekend.
like an entrepreneurial creative spirit then, like
Definitely. I definitely think
modeled
it comes from,
behavior.
I think there's that thing of both entrepreneurial spirit, and also it's an interesting thing where if you are somebody that goes into business for yourself, there is that aspect of, sort of, I guess, instead of sort of being beholden to others or being an employee of someone.
Creating your own
uh,
path.
yeah, I think so. And it's funny because as an actor, you're kind of doing a bit of both. Like, you still are working for companies in a
Yeah.
sense, and you're part of a larger production, and you have people that are sort of telling you where you need to be and are kind of, in charge, as it were. But then I think there is something that is entrepreneurial and is sort of within your own, choice. And so I think that there was probably never going to be a traditional path for me because my mom didn't take a traditional
Yeah.
path. I don't think I was ever destined for something that was a bit more like boxed in and structured, because I think I just came up seeing that there's another
So much
way.
more. Yeah,
Yeah.
why not? What do you admire most about her?
Um, I feel like my mom, again, thinking about if I were in the same situation, or just being older and really sort of reflecting on it, to pick up and move to another country with your child and just sort of go for it and take a chance. It's a huge risk. And I've always viewed my mom as a risk taker and sort of fearless. And, again, sometimes I feel like I'm like that myself. Sometimes I'm like, no, I could be cautious. And, I guess you want to have a bit of both, right? You got to
Yeah.
know when to go, that feels ill advised and maybe I shouldn't do
The
that.
stove is hot. Let's
Yeah,
not.
exactly. Yeah. But I think it is interesting if you think about, kind of the markers of success. You have to be ballsy, you have to be a risk taker, but you do have to take calculated risks and
Yeah.
you do know when something just doesn't, you have your gut instinct or feeling like, you know what, there's something off here, there's something not right. I think I'm not going to do that. And I think all the time about people that move to other countries, and just how big of a chance you're taking because you're really picking up your whole life, especially when you're an adult
Yeah.
and to really start from scratch somewhere. You have to build community. You have to, of course, there are the necessities of work and shelter and those type of things. But I think even if you manage to do the basics, it can be very isolating. It can be very lonely. And I think that to do that and feel like part of your thinking, your reasoning is like a better life for your children, a better life for yourself. I have huge admiration about that, both for my mother and for anyone else that sort of takes that chance and works their butt off to, provide. Because it's you can easily take it for granted because as a kid you're shielded probably from the hardest
Yeah.
aspects of what that really means.
And then the older you get, I feel like you're more risk adverse because you know so much. So it's like, especially like, you're a full on grown up with a child, like making a leap like that. Like human children are not people who are risk takers. I mean, fortune favors the bold, as they say. I guess on
Yeah.
that vein, did she have a slogan or mantra or advice that she always instilled in you or said?
Trying to My mom has lots of isms. Um, you know, I would probably say, I mean, this one always makes me laugh, and I have to sort of like think through. It's used, I guess, in different contexts, but like my mom will always say, "You two go grow," which is kind of like, so my mom's from Ghana, just for context, originally. And I think it's that thing of like, if let's say my mom, who is, I would say she's technically savvy for her age, but she's like, still mom with tech, which can, end humorously on many different
Yes, totally.
video call or how do I do this. And so often when I'm kind of exasperated, I'm like, oh, mom, like, give me the phone. Like, it's like this. Then it's like, you two go grow, which is like, this is going to be you someday.
Oh,
Be the older person also struggling with whatever technological advancement has come about. So I don't know that that's a slogan, but I think it's
it's a
that.
good reminder.
Yeah, like you can make fun of me, but this is you're
That's
gonna
gonna
be in
be
this.
you very soon. I mean, sooner than you'd like to think. I mean, I feel that with like the iPhone update. I'm like, why are the emojis different? Why is my camera roll different? I was like, oh no, it's happening, the
True.
change. But I get
Uh,
that. Well,
I get it.
you two go grow. That's cute. I like the way that it's phrased too. That's funny. I
Yeah.
mean, if you could say anything to your matriarch, what would it be?
Oh, so many things. But I would say thank you, which I probably don't say enough. I feel like I always want to laugh and be like, Mom, it's assumed. It's
Yeah,
assumed.
you should know.
It's assumed I love you. But always it's good to sort of have that reminder of like you can't say it enough or too much.
Yeah.
Uh, and I feel very fortunate, especially to sort of take the path I've taken, which has had many ups and downs, for my mom to be there for both the highs and the lows. But the fact that she supported me in the first place, especially when you're an immigrant's child or an immigrant's daughter, when you tell, your family like, hey, I want to like go to a really expensive school and get a drama degree and
Yeah.
pursue an
Not
acting
everybody would
career.
be cheering you on from the start, for
No,
sure.
no, and I definitely know people where the lack of support, especially early on, maybe put them on a path. And sometimes your route can still be circuitous. Maybe you don't get to sort of go to the school you wanted to go to, major in the thing you want to major in, and you still somehow find your way. But when you do have the support, and when you do have the encouragement, and somebody really believing in you, I think it can make all the difference. When people manage without, I find it even more impressive. It's like, wow, against all odds, and with people saying otherwise, you did it. You're here.
Yeah.
What feels really like a shared victory, and a shared journey is when you do have, for my mom and other people in my life, where it's like you can do this and you have the support, and that is like, it makes it even sweeter. It makes it even better. And I always remember having like this full circle moment. It was years ago when I did The Accountant, and we had the premiere in London, and it was the first time I'd ever had a premiere in London. And they did it in Leicester Square, and they had a red carpet, and my mom was there. And I was like thinking back to when my mom left the UK with me in tow as a toddler, and I'm like, here we are, all these
Wow.
years at the premiere in the place that we left. And it was really
How
poignant for
full
me,
circle. Yeah.
circle, because I'm sure that even in your wildest dreams, I don't know if my mom would have imagined that, for both of us. But it was very like fulfilling to be like, hey, that risk that you took was worth it. Like, here we are. Like, it's because you left, and it's because you took a chance that, like, we're back here in this way.
Yeah.
It's pretty
That's
cool.
so meaningful. Oh, I'm sure that's touching anytime you have a premiere in London now. Like, I'm sure that never gets old because as you're like, wow, that's like beyond our wildest dreams that we could be
Not.
doing,
I,
like
I
being an actor already, like the trajectory and it's tumultuous and the path is not linear. Everybody I've talked to, it's just a wild journey. And so like having that moment, especially in the place that your mom like risked it all to move away from at one point, but
Yeah, and I even think back to her mother, my grandmother, who I the last time I saw her as an adult, I took a trip to Ghana, and I hadn't been there since I was like a baby.
wow.
So my grandmother didn't really get to see me. She would have seen pictures and had
Sure.
updates. Like, she didn't really get to see me until I was able to go there in my mid 20s. And so we were like three generations of women. But
Wow.
back to this, the impossibility of imagining any of this, because my mother grew up very humbly under very different circumstances in Ghana. And so to think even to my grandmother, who again, like, I unfortunately didn't have the kind of relationship I would have loved to have had, but for my mother's mother to sort of see me as an adult, and to think even just a generation before of how
Right.
impossible any of that would have seemed.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time, that it's like through a series of decisions. And often, it can be a decision by a family, a decision by a couple. But I do feel like with women, especially when they're making choices for their children, knowing that it can literally lead them on a trajectory that will have an effect beyond just that one generation.
Yeah.
Like, I should not be here. I shouldn't be here. I think about it all the time, that like it could have just as easily been a completely different outcome, a
Yeah.
completely different. But I think that the series of choices that my grandmother would have made, that my mother would have made, had they not taken those chances and leaps of faith, and decisions to sort of better themselves, and therefore secure futures for their children, I wouldn't be sitting here. Like, I just wouldn't be. So it is kind
Wow.
of like, an amazing thing to feel like those decisions, like taking a chance on yourself, and feeling like that could again lead to a better life for the people around you. Then it becomes bigger than you. The risk doesn't have to be just yours and yours alone. You're sort of doing it, and it's about more than just yourself.
100%. That's so magical. I
Yeah.
love it. What a way
Nice.
to end it. I mean, I have so many more questions for you, but suddenly our time has come and gone. I just can't express how much I've just loved working with you, learning from you, being around your infectious positivity and hard work and just warmness as a human. Loved getting to hear a little bit about your mom today, and just thank you for your time. It was such an honor.
Thank you. And thank you for such thoughtful questions in this thoughtful podcast. It's nice because, again, you realize as you're saying it out loud, it's like, oh, I don't really like articulate this as often as I should. And I think it's like a great opportunity, especially when you do want to give women their due,
Yeah.
because you get to say thank you. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's after the fact when people have left us that we're reflective and it's all the things we would have wanted to say. So thank you so much for like giving me
Oh,
the
I
time and
love it.
having this to sort of give all these women their
My pleasure.
flowers.
Yes, that's what I'm always trying to give flowers. Well, that was so lovely. Thank you. I mean, if you want to see more of what Cynthia is up to, you can go and follow her on Instagram at Cynthia with a Y, Addai-Robinson. Thank you for coming to the party. And everybody out there, remember, if you have the gift, like I just said, of having the ability to call your mom or grandma or mentor, whoever your matriarch is, go call them and tell them you love them and ask them about their life.
Yeah,
Do it.
absolutely. And I'm going to go pick my mom up right now.
I was like, I'm going to go call my mom. Great. So inspiration. Well, get out there and make it a great week. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
That was awesome. Sorry,
Yeah,
we went a little bit over.
No, that's okay. I literally, it's hilarious. I am literally going to go. Yeah, it was like one of those things where like my mom, because since she's been visiting us, she's been having like knee stuff, and I'm like, you got to go to physical
No,
therapy.
yeah. And she's not going to do it unless you schedule it and drop her and pick her up.
Kind of the stubborn aspect is the aspect where I'm like, that's where
Oh, I
she's
see that.
get some of my stubbornness, but there was a cancellation today, so I was like, I think you
We're
should
doing
jump.
it. It's a sign.
Husband was kind enough to take her there.
That's sweet.
I'm going to go and collect her. So
Well,
yes.
good. That's so important.
So
Well, enjoy your mom time.
yeah, and happy holidays.
Yes.
Time and hopefully then there's some information about
Something that I'll see you next year.
see it next year. Feel confident in that, but it's just more the thing of the life planning, and because again for us it involves us moving back.
Yeah.
It's like, hey guys, like let me know
Just
because
so I can get my ducks in a row.
here for life abroad again.
Yeah.
But,
Well, enjoy California and home and the holidays and
that's weird. I turned on my do not disturb.
oh, just kidding.
That's probably my husband being
That's just like
hey.
okay, happy holidays. Thank you so much.